For some reason, the Prince has been really strong in the meta lately, since the last patch or the last set of balance changes. Now, the meta is a very interesting thing in most games, especially in a game like this, where one little change, which happens every month or so now, can have lingering effects in different parts of the meta. So let's go, for example, let's say like there's a Royal Giant buff. Naturally, to counter the Royal Giant, since he's going to be more prevalent in the meta due to his buff, people are going to be playing P.E.K.K.A. more. And then to counter that P.E.K.K.A. and the Royal Giant, you'll also be seeing Inferno Tower. And then in turn, you might be seeing specifically P.E.K.K.A. control decks that include Ewiz to counter that Inferno Tower that is countering the P.E.K.K.A. that is countering the buffed Royal Giant. So it's really intricate, and you need to look down the road a little bit sometimes and make sure that you're thinking about what other cards are going to be affected in the meta, not the card that was directly nerfed or buffed. So since the Prince has been so prevalent in the meta, tonight we're going to be taking a look at a Prince Bridge Spam deck that also includes the Musketeer. Now, this first match here is up against a Balloon deck. So, let's talk about the Prince first of all. So, the Prince is really strong in the current meta, as I have mentioned, and again, it's probably because of an indirect change. He didn't directly receive a buff. He didn't really receive a nerf, which wouldn't really make sense for him to be being more prevalent in the meta anyway. But it's more just about, it's more like a commentary on how the meta changes and shifts, because you need to think about those indirect changes. You need to think about, like, okay, since Three Musketeers fell into the ground and is completely, unviable right now, what is going to shine because of that? What's going to accelerate now? What's going to do really well? And this is one of those cases. There's not too many counters to the Prince out right now, so the Prince has been really strong. I've been seeing him in a lot of decks. He's been in minor poison control decks. He's been in this Bridge Spam deck. I've even seen him in like some Golem decks with like Hunter and stuff like that. So it's a really interesting card, and I'm really glad that he is back in the meta. He's, well, not really, I shouldn't say interesting. He's a pretty basic card, but I really like him. He's a real powerhouse. I like the charge effect. Simple and straightforward, but kind of exciting, not too boring and unoriginal, He was the original charge effect, if I'm not mistaken. He was like the first card in the game to have that before, Dark Prince, and before Bandit came out, before Mega Knight came out with the Leap and everything. So he's in a good spot. Definitely recommend using him. Consider swapping him out, like, if you are running, say, a Knight or a Bandit or another, like, relatively cheap melee unit in your deck. You may want to try him out. Double Prince isn't in the best spot right now because Dark Prince isn't super great, but I have lost to a giant Double Prince deck here and there, so do keep a lookout for that, or keep your mind on that. I was going to, like, point to my eyes or point to my head, but either way, keep your eyes on it, keep your mind on it. Prince is all over the place, so be countering it accordingly. Alright, guys. This deck itself, it is a Bridge Spam deck, or it is reminiscent of Bridge Spam style decks. However, it does have a surprising amount of defensive potential. It does a good job of playing defense and then going in for a counter push, a powerful offensive counter push, which is honestly, that's a Bridge Spam in a nutshell. And the thing is, with Bridge Spam, you can get aggressive later in the game and spam at the bridge with your Battle Ram and your Prince and your minions and your Ice Golem and your Bandit and all of that. But early game, you don't necessarily want to do that because it can be kind of risky. You don't want to put yourself in a bad position where you wasted a whole bunch of elixir on an offensive push and they shut it down with like a single skeleton army. All of a sudden, you've lost 7 elixir for their only 3 elixir, and you're in a really bad spot. They can punish you and, try to take a tower really quickly after that. So don't get yourself caught into that awkward position. But once double elixir time comes, and once you have an elixir advantage, or you're in a really good position, you can afford to be a little bit more aggressive, throw things down to the bridge, and try to connect to that tower as aggressively and powerfully as possible. So this deck, as I mentioned, it is reminiscent of Bridge Spam. It's a little bit different though, because you have like the Musketeer as your range support. You don't have a Hunter in there. It's not a Hunter Bridge Spam. And you have the Prince in there. Traditionally, you'd actually have like the Dark Prince in Bridge Spam. But since he got nerfed so many times, or at least once or twice, and he's not in a very good spot, we're not going to be seeing him much, if at all, right now. So we got the Prince in there instead. Now, there's a lot of old school Bridge Spam cards in this deck, and I want to talk about those quickly. So first of all, the Bandit. Well, the Bandit's pretty straightforward. Bandit's really aggressive. She can dash. She can absorb Sparky hits. She can absorb Prince charges. She can connect to a wizard, take it out, and half a second later be on the tower. She's just a really amazing card. And in a recent CWA video, his last like legendary card ranking, he was actually, or she was actually his #1 choice, his top best card in the game, best legendary card in the game right now choice, beating out Miner, which has been, you know, his top choice for a long time. I don't necessarily agree that she's the best card, but she fits into the Bridge Spam archetype really well. She can be used on defense and counter things, you know, like Musketeers and Wizards. She can even be used as like a mini tank to absorb a hit or two from like a P.E.K.K.A. if you absolutely have to. And again, guys, don't underestimate the power of that charge and the fact that it absorbs damage, or it basically eliminates all incoming damage. So, you know, if she's charging or a prince is charging at her and she dashes to it, Dark Prince, the same thing, she won't take that initial damage. Ever since that Sparky range change, she does the same thing with Sparky, as I mentioned. If you can time it correctly and she dashes, the Sparky will shoot at the exact same time that she's dashing. He'll get it, or she'll get her shot off, the Sparky, but Bandit won't take any damage. And then Bandit can essentially take out that Sparky. If not completely, then get it really low. I don't remember the exact interaction off the top of my head right here. So you have the Bandit in there, very classic Bridge Spam card. You've got the Battle Ram, same thing. Very offensive. You use it at the bridge on a counter push. Once you've defended with like your Musketeer, you put the Battle Ram in front of it. It's really aggressive. It goes straight for the tower. It has been nerfed, but it's still a really solid card, and I definitely recommend trying out that card. You know, it puts a lot of pressure on them. They absolutely have to answer it, or it'll just do an insane amount of damage to their tower. So it's a really aggressive, really pressuring card that forces your opponent to answer it, or else they're absolutely going to pay for it. Now this one is up against a Royal Giant deck. It looks like it may be the classic Royal Giant Furnace with E-Wiz. Yeah, Barbarrel Guards. I'm seeing all these cards in there. I think that's what it is. We'll double check once the battle gets rolling here. So that is the role of the Bandit and the Battle Ram. Honestly, those are your two most like aggressive bridge spammy cards in this deck. All the other cards kind of complement that. Now, the Prince does have a charge effect. He can be aggressive. He can be used on offense. He is very devastating if he connects to a tower. But oh, that was a misclick, by the way, with that snowball. Total mistake on my part. Mistakes are made, but you know, it's okay. I'll pull it together, I think, and pull out a victory at the end here. So anyway, the Prince, as I mentioned, he is aggressive. He is offensive. But he's not like the Bandit who instantly charges. Yeah, she takes a second or two to charge up, but he takes, I think they actually equalized it, so it's all the same now. So he takes the same amount of time. Either way, it feels slower with him, and he has to actually, you know, travel that charge distance. Whereas the Bandit, as soon as she's charged up, she just dashes, and it's like a split second she's there on the target. There's no, like, travel time or anything like that. So, let's see, what else? The Prince, yeah, can be offensive, can be aggressive. Not a traditional bridge spam card. More likely you're going to see the Dark Prince in the classic variations, but he fits in this deck really well. He's a defensive powerhouse because he has high DPS. If you get his charge effect on, he can do a crazy amount of initial damage, and then just his regular auto attack is pretty nifty as well. His range is not fully melee. He's got slightly longer range due to that lance. He can poke things from afar, so use that to your advantage as well. You know, he can take out certain units before they can even like connect to him. So fits in this deck really well, really good on defense. You're not usually going to be using him offensively at the bridge a whole lot. You can from time to time, don't get me wrong, but you're more so going to be using him on defense, and then when he's going in for a counter push, you support that counter push with like your Bandit or your Battle Ram or your Ice Golem. You'll often see me putting an Ice Golem in front of him because that'll protect him from any you know, units that they may use to counter him. It'll also, if it dies, it'll take out any skeleton army or anything like that, which is going to be a natural counter to your Prince. So I like putting the Ice Golem in front of him a lot. Occasionally I'll put the Ice Golem directly in front of the Battle Ram as well. It's really your call, guys, whatever you're most comfortable with. Now, what else do we have in this deck? These are the more unconventional cards. Well, Ice Golem is pretty standard in Bridge Spam decks. I don't want to go too into detail about what his role is because it's pretty straightforward. He's your mini tank. He's your glass tank in this deck. You put him in front of your charging units. You use him to kite things like P.E.K.K.A.s. You use him just as a mini tank to absorb some hits. You use him on defense to fully counter like a Musketeer just to distract it for long enough. You know what I mean? He's a pretty straightforward card. Well, not really straightforward, but he's been around long enough that most people kind of understand how to use him. If you don't really know how to use the Ice Golem, be sure to leave a comment in the comment section below. I'll give you guys more details on that, but I don't want to spend too much time on him. He's just your mini tank in this deck. Then you've got the minions and the Musketeer, and this is where it gets really wonky. Somebody please answer this for me. Why are minions so popular in Bridge Spam? I don't get it. I've tried in other videos because I've covered Bridge Spam many times. I've tried in other videos to figure it out and theorize. And my theory is always just kind of like, yeah, well, they're like kind of a mid-range support card. They can attack air. Just like generic, general things that minions or certain cards can do. My question is, why specifically are minions so popular in Bridge Spam decks? Why is it not Mega Minion? Why is it not Minion Horde? Why do you not just have another range support card? Maybe because it's susceptible to Fireball? So I want to hear what you guys have to say about this one, but I'll tell you this much. Minions are very common in Bridge Spam decks. I see them in most Bridge Spam decks most of the time. And they work out pretty well. Like I said, they're just a pretty like mid-range universal card. They attack air and grounds. They don't die to zap. They are relatively quick. They've got relatively high DPS. They only cost 3 elixir. It's kind of like the Mega Minion. It's just kind of like that really good all-around card that can be put into just about any deck. Alright guys, this should be a good one. This is going up against the Prince Minor control deck that I was talking about at the beginning of this video. This is another deck that I tried recently, and I really like it, honestly. But for some reason, as of late, I just haven't been a big fan of minor poison decks. Like, it was an archetype that I was very fond of for a long time. But I don't know why, as of lately, I just feel like they're too, like, unforgiving. And that's not good for me, guys. I'm not the best player, as you guys know. I never claim to be. In fact, I often talk myself down and remind you guys, I'm not very good. Since the trophy change, I'm sitting at about 5,000 trophies. But that doesn't really mean anything. Like, I like theorizing, I like coming up with decks, I like sharing strategies with you guys and breaking down decks and all kinds of fun stuff like that. But I'm not that great of a player myself. So this minor deck, this minor poison archetype, isn't really for me too much because it's very unforgiving. If I make one or two little mistakes, which I'm prone to do, you know, it can completely cost you the game. It's a very high skill cap, you know, control-oriented deck and archetype. You destroy your opponent by chipping away slowly and, you know, playing successful defenses that you can turn into offensive counter pushes. And you can't really slip up much because a little bit of damage on your tower can really cost you, and you need to get a lot of chip damage onto their tower in order to just get it down at all. So not really the best deck for me, but if you're looking for a minor poison deck, this is definitely the one to play right now. Highly recommend it. It's got minor poison, Prince, Inferno Dragon, Bats, and Spear Goblins, so there's that zap bait element. Here's a good example of the Bandit absorbing the Prince's charge, so just to point that out for you guys. Alright guys, that is most of the cards in this deck. What else do we have? I talked about the minions. I talked about just about everything else. The Fireball and Snowball, they're just the cards that are current in the meta. If it was a few patches ago, it would probably be Barbarian Barrel instead of Snowball. If it was before that, it would probably be Zap or Log instead of Snowball. Fireball, instant damage, works well with the theory of Bridge Spam, and that, you know, like, oh, get damage onto their tower, charge them, be aggressive, take out their tower. Because of that instant burst damage. You can use it to finish off their towers. At this point, just 2 Fireballs will finish off his tower. You could replace it with like a Poison if you wanted, but it doesn't seem to fit quite as well into the whole concept of Bridge Spam. Alright guys, as I mentioned, the Musketeer and the Snowball are just for the current meta. Musketeer is another card that you wouldn't normally see in a Bridge Spam deck. Traditionally, you would see like a Hunter or something, or just another Bridge Spammy card. But I think it's because of the recent buff to the Musketeer. She's in a pretty good spot right now. So they kind of took out that range support card, the Hunter, and replaced it with another card that plays a very similar role with being range support and costs the exact same amount of elixir. They're kind of like counterparts too, huh? The Musketeer and the Hunter. Like, the Hunter's like the male version. He does a little bit more burst damage up close, but is slower, and he's got a big old mustache. But they have like same color scheme, and they they're both range support. You know, the Musketeer is more single target, a little bit further range, you know, so on and so forth. A little bit more of a sniper, right? Whereas he's more burst damage, more of a shotgunner. But I feel like they're kind of interchangeable counterparts in a way. Slightly different roles, but relatively the same. And in most decks, you could probably change one for the other if you're looking for a viable replacement. Now, as I mentioned, guys, it can be an aggressive deck. It is Bridge Spam, after all, right? So, you know, don't necessarily play super defensively the whole game. If you see an opportune time to go in for offense, be aggressive. Put that Prince at the bridge. Put the Bandit at the bridge. Go in for the tower. Especially once you get into double elixir and you've been defending and playing passively most of the game, you can oftentimes catch them off guard by all of a sudden being really aggressive. You've played defense, you've got your Musketeer still alive, you've got your minions still alive, you put the Battle Ram, you put the Prince, you put the Bandit, however much elixir you have, all at the bridge, and then maybe, especially if they like don't have their Fireball in cycle, for example, then they can't just Fireball all of that at once, then you can really take advantage of that aggressiveness. So don't be afraid to do that, but do it at the opportune time. Don't be overly aggressive early just because you're playing Bridge Spam. Do it when you're ahead in elixir, when you've successfully defended, when it's double elixir time and you can catch your opponent off guard, right? It's almost like a pocket strategy, not a pocket card, but a pocket strategy. You're playing defensively, and then all of a sudden, late game, you get really aggressive. Counter them, go in for a really deadly push, and catch them off guard, and then their tower's gone, and you win. Alright guys, opening moves and card replacements to wrap it up. So, for opening moves, I would probably open with minions in the back. Occasionally Ice Golem in the back, but I generally like to save him for defense because he counters things like P.E.K.K.A.s really well. He can just be a really good defensive card, and he doesn't really provide much offensive threat, so you're not like cycling anything that they have to answer, which is kind of a concept behind cycling cards in the back anyway. You could also cycle Muskie in the back. It's a little bit risky. I wouldn't really recommend it too much unless you know that they don't have like a fireball. By the way, I missed my fireball there, but it is what it is. Didn't need that snowball either, but hindsight's 20/20. Terrible plays by Mr. Berger 101. All right, card replacements still, or opening moves. Sorry, card replacements are next. Opening moves. Musketeer, a little bit risky in the back, but it's an option. You could Prince in the back, but it's a little bit risky because of the high elixir cost. So my go-tos would be minions, Bandit in the back or at the bridge, or maybe an Ice Golem. You don't usually open with a spell, you don't usually open with a battle ram or a prince, but if you want to, I guess you could. Not my recommendation, but be my guest if that's how you like playing. For card replacements, let's just skim through this real quick. For Snowball, another light spell. Do Zap, do, Barbarian Barrel, do the Log, whatever floats your boat. For minions, you could do Mega Minion, another kind of range support card. For Ice Golem, you could easily put in like a Knight or a Valkyrie in there, some sort of like mini tank. For Fireball, just put another spell in, like Poison. If you want to get really heavy, you could put like a Lightning or, a Rocket or something in there. For Musketeer, as I mentioned, you could just replace her with like a Hunter. If you don't have either of those up to level, just do another range support card. Let's see, Archers are a pretty easy, cheap replacement, and they're commons, so they're a good replacement for most range support. For the Battle Ram, actually, you could probably go like Skeleton Barrel, something aggressive. You could also go Dark Prince and make it a double Prince deck. Same thing for the Prince. You could go like Dark Prince, make it a double Prince deck. Just another aggressive card. You've already got Bandit. You've already got Battle Ram. If you wanted just another mini tank too, you could put like a Knight or a Valkyrie or something in there. And then the Bandit, she's not too replaceable in this deck. You could go like Knight or even like Royal Ghost. And I have seen some Bridge Spam decks with Royal Ghost, so definitely a viable replacement. But Bandit and Battle Ram are pretty staple in Bridge Spam decks. If you take those out, you're kind of changing the archetype here. So I wouldn't recommend replacing either of those, but those are some options if you absolutely must. Let's say you don't have the Bandit, or like your Battle Ram's under-leveled, and you want to play Skeleton Barrel. Skeleton Barrel's not in a good spot, but it's honestly a viable replacement. It's honestly a viable replacement for Battle Ram. Alright guys, let's wrap up this last replay here. At this point you can see I probably can get aggressive and try to take out that tower. I need to play defense too though because I don't want to allow him to finish my tower, but you'll see I start pushing pretty heavily at the bridge here. And I send in the Snowball just to knock that witch away so that the Barbarian is able to connect to the tower. And he actually does a really, really good job. The Snowball pushes it away and the Barbarian gets 2 swings off on the tower and takes it out. And that was it for that match. If you made it this far, you rock. Thank you so much, guys. I really appreciate it. Make sure to leave the video a thumbs up if you enjoyed it, or a thumbs down if you didn't. Either way, I want to know what you guys think. Leave a comment in the comment section below. Let me know if you enjoy this format, if you like this deck, or if you just want to say hi. And of course, if you want to come on the channel as a guest, voice chat guest, do collaboration, whatever, just leave a comment in the comment section below. Or you can always email me or hit me up on any of my social medias. I'm pretty active with those as well. And of course, if you're new to the channel, consider subscribing by hitting that little burger down there. I cover decks, balance changes, occasionally other games, things like that all the time. Anyway, thanks so much for watching, guys, and have a good night.